some of you is I'm not going to invite you to raise your hand. All right? You do not have to turn to your neighbor and share your innermost thoughts. Instead, you just have to consider the question to yourself. Can you do that? All right, good, good. Here's the question. Are you Tigger or are you Eeyore? I told you it was deeply personal, right? For those of you who do not know what I'm talking about, this comes from Winnie the Pooh, the classic lovable bear who, let's be honest, has a very bad addiction to honey that we often overlook. But Winnie the Pooh has a number of good friends. Christopher Robin and Piglet are his two best friends, but in the magical forest he also has a number of other friends with very different personalities. Tigger, for those of you who have somehow managed to never ever read or see a Winnie the Pooh cartoon, Tigger is a tiger with boundless energy. He literally jumps, bounces into every room he enters. He is so energetic, he's like a little puppy on Mountain Dew. He has never met a word he cannot mispronounce. Tigger is the one that anytime there's a challenge, anytime there's an obstacle, Tigger is ready to jump to it. Because this was made for Tiggers. This is what Tiggers do. He's always ready to jump into the situation. I'm guessing, as I look around this service or this morning, there's a few of you Tiggers here today. You're those people. You're full of energy. I am thankful for the Tiggers in my life. There are people in my family, there are people in my friends group who are like that. That they walk into a room, they walk into my life, they're like bouncing, they're ready to go. Whatever challenge is there, they say, let's go, let's do the impossible. But they also wear me out. If I'm just being blatantly honest, sometimes I just want to say, just enough, Tigger. Just enough. Which probably means I'm a little bit more like Eeyore. Everyone's favorite blue/purple donkey. He's the one who maybe sees the glass, maybe half empty at times, a little more pessimistic, but he realizes the challenges that are before him. He sees the problems that could take place. I don't know how many episodes include the saying from Eeyore in the midst of a problem, when Pooh is figuring out a solution, or Tigger saying, let's do this, where Eeyore says, I don't know, Pooh Bear. I don't know. Maybe it's because of the weather. Maybe it's because of that fifth helping of turkey I had on Thursday. But today, as I listen to the Apostle Paul's words, I feel a little bit more like Eeyore. Paul says, let your light shine like stars in the world. That's a beautiful expression. It's the 15th verse of the book of Philippians. And if you think about what it means, is Paul's bringing in lots of old images from throughout Scripture. For instance, way back in the book of Genesis, God makes a promise to Abraham and Sarah, includes that God would give them more descendants than there are stars in the sky. Later on, those descendants become the people of Israel. And the nation of Israel is to be a light to all other nations. Jesus is later called the light of the world. So when Paul says, let your light shine, to be a star among the nation, or star among the world, it makes perfect sense that he's bringing all these things together, that we would live our lives in such a good way, that our faithfulness would be an example to other people, that through us God would somehow transform the world. Again, it sounds really good for some of you Tiggers out there. But for those of us who are like Eeyore, where you're saying, I don't know, Paul. Seems like a whole bunch of big things. I don't know. For instance, I like the idea of living faith in such a way that it transforms the world. But I also know the truth. Do you know what the truth is? As much as I would like to change the world, I'm also the same person who loses my car keys twice a week. Every week. In my office. Pastor Carl hears me rustling and panicking, working through my bag. If you cannot find your car keys twice a week, every week, that seems to be the cutoff, right? Can God really change the world through someone who cannot find their car keys? It seems like a tall task even for God. There's other challenges, right? For some of you are saying, I can't even balance my checkbook. And for some of you who are thinking, I would like to change the world, but every time I show up to talk to a friend in need, no matter how hard I try, I end up saying the wrong thing. Or maybe, just maybe, I show up at church on a Sunday morning and I've got about this much, an ounce of faith left in me. And I'm overwhelmed by questions and doubts, and I'm clinging for dear life to this little thread of faith. How in the world could God use me and my light to change the world? Some of us might show up wondering, do I even have the light of Christ to share? And if I do, is it really going to make a difference? When you meet a teenager who's going through difficult circumstances in life, you might be able to say, hey, I can help the kid out today. But is that really going to change the situation Thursday or Friday? Probably not. If there's a family in your neighborhood who's going through something difficult this Thanksgiving weekend, you say, I might be able to help out one afternoon with something small, but I can't change their life. What do I have to offer? My light's just not enough. Or maybe you have a friend who is grieving, and you say, yeah, I can meet that person for coffee tomorrow morning, but tomorrow afternoon they're still going to be sad. What do I have to offer? Again, I hear this story from the Apostle Paul when he says, let your light shine like stars in the world. And I think it sounds really, really good. But it sounds a little too much. At least for those of us who are wondering, do we have a light to shine? For those of us who are wondering, our little light, can it even make a difference in the world? Of course, Paul has a response. Because Tiggers always have a response, don't they? Paul says, for those of you who sit there this morning wondering, do I even have a light to share those around me? Paul says this. He quotes this long passage that I read to you. It's not Paul's words, it's one of the first Christian songs that were sang. People were singing in the early church. Jesus, who though he was in the form of God, did not regard equality with God as something to be exploited, but instead emptied himself and took the form of a human, becoming obedient even to the point of death on a cross. It is about what God has done for us in Jesus Christ. And to take out all those big words, essentially what it means is this: that God, in Jesus Christ, has come to dwell with you. Which means on your best days and on your worst days. In your moments of joy and in your moments of sorrow, God, in the person of Jesus Christ, walks with you, has chosen to be among you, which means this: you have the light of Jesus shining around you and through you. Not because of what you've done or because of what you have left undone, but because that's where Jesus has promised and chosen to dwell. On your best days and on your worst days, the light of Christ shines through you. On the days when everything is going perfectly, on those days when you can't find your car keys or balance your checkbook or say the right thing to save your life, still, the light of God in Jesus Christ shines in you. You have the light of Christ. But you may be wondering still, if I've got this much of a light, how in the world will that make a difference in the world? Let me tell you a quick story, and by quick story I mean long story, but that's what pastors say. A quick story about people who had this much light to give. You have to go back to the 1960s. Leipzig, Germany. In Leipzig, Germany, it was ruled under communist rule. In the 1960s, there was this congregation, St. Nicholas Cathedral. Huge cathedral. Tiny little congregation. The secret police paid no attention to it whatsoever. It wasn't because the Stasi honored the Christian faith. That's not the case. It was because they simply were not a threat. It was a big, big cathedral, but just a few people. What could a few people possibly do in the midst of communism? The priest on Monday mornings would go in every Monday morning, dark sanctuary. He would light a candle, he would sit down, and he would pray for a host of things, including peace and freedom. Freedom in all of its expressions for his people. Somehow, a few people from his congregation found out about this. And one day he walked in and there were 5 or 6 shadows at the front of the church. Assuming it was the secret police, of course he was very nervous. He walked up front and then he heard the voices. They were way too high to be the secret police. It was 5 or 6 teenagers from the congregation and from the community who had stopped on their way to school. They asked if they could pray for peace, if they could pray for freedom as well. So he showed them where the candles were, they lit the candles, and they sat down and he walked them through the prayers he said week after week. Now this again is one of those stories that preachers tell because, right, teenagers living out their faith, it's a nice story, it makes everyone feel good, but let's be realistic. The light they had to offer was this much. Can that light really make a difference in the world? Turns out it can. I wish I could tell you that things transformed overnight, that when the 70s arrived, there were thousands of people at the church, but that's not how God works in the world. The kingdom of God doesn't jump forward light years sometimes. Sometimes it goes by inches, or half inches, or quarter inches. The point where you almost feel like you are standing still. And yet God is faithful. And those teenagers, as they grew up, gradually a few more people began to join them. And even after they graduated, some came back and others filled into their spot. And little by little, that group grew. Until eventually, it began to meet on Monday nights. Because there needed to be an opportunity for more people to join them. They met on Monday nights. Fast forward to October 9th, 1989. By this time, it was a big deal. Lots and lots of people were gathered to light a candle and say a prayer for peace and for freedom. And by this time, the military was called in. 8,000 troops were sent to Leipzig, Germany. They had one assignment: put an end to what was happening on Mondays at St. Nicholas Church. 8,000 troops gathered around not just the cathedral, but around this huge courtyard. They were heavily armed. They made a show of loading their weapons in front of the people who gathered. And yet, the crowd did not disperse. They lit candle after candle. They said prayer after prayer. They sang songs and they held up big sheets of paper. Signs, I believe is what they're called. Signs, they held up signs asking for peace and asking for freedom. 70,000 people gathered October 9th, 1989. You know why that's significant? Does anybody remember what happened December 9th, 1989? 1 month later, the Berlin Wall fell. Communism collapsed. Now, the story of how communism collapsed is a larger story, right? But if you're going to tell that story, it has to include 5 or 6 teenagers who showed up Monday after Monday, who lit a candle and said a prayer and let their little light shine in the world. And somehow God took their little light and did something extraordinary in them and through them. Friends, this is what our God does. When you meet that teenager, you don't have to solve all of his or her problems. You just have to do your part, let your light shine. And trust that somehow somebody else will come along tomorrow and the next day to do their part as well. When you have that family in your community, in your neighborhood, who's going through something difficult, you don't have to transform their lives or their situation. You just have to let your light shine, do this much, and trust that somehow God will do something extraordinary through your actions. When you have a friend that is going through grief, you don't have to say all the right things. You know what? You just have to show up and trust that Christ goes with you and is there and somehow magnifies your little light and illuminates that person's life in a way that is far greater than what we could possibly have expected. This is what God does through tigers and yes, even through us evilers. That's what God has the capacity to do. So people of God, this week, in little ways and in big ways, let your light shine. Amen.